As Tony Tucker's reputation as a hard man grew, so did his wealth, and the former soldier just couldn't resist showing it off. Local workers who laid carpets at his £250,000 house recalled seeing rolls of notes lining the mantelpiece. The sum must have run into thousands. But Tucker didn't have to worry about leaving money lying around because no one would dare steal it. One Sunday morning at his former home in Chafford Hundred, neighbours were disturbed by the sound of loud music. Inside, a professional DJ had been hired to spin records as Tucker lounged in bed with common wife-in-law Anna Whitehead. He had started to live life like a mafia don. Parked outside the Diamond Lode property was his new jet black top-of-the-range Porsche with the number plate TT9. A year later, in autumn 95, Tucker had enough money to buy the Fobbin home, but he would only live in it for 2 months. It was called Bromount Lodge and came complete with a sophisticated video intercom to vet callers and guard dogs which patrolled after dark. Tucker ran a lucrative security agency which allowed him to pocket a share of the profits from drugs sold at clubs where he ran the door. He was responsible for the infamous Raquel's nightclub in Basildon, where the ecstasy tablet, which eventually ended up in the hands of Leah Betts. As the money rolled in, he started injecting a cocktail of steroids and cocaine, and his regime of terror began. A former associate revealed Tucker kept horses stabled near Basildon. He discovered the owner of the stables was in debt and made discreet inquiries to find out who owned the money. Armed with the information, Tucker sent a group of heavies into the riding school bar. It was smashed to pieces with iron rods. The next day, Tucker went to the owner and said he'd heard there was some trouble and knew who was behind it. He told him if he could stable his horses for free, he would ensure there was no more violence. A Stanford plumber also had good reason to remember Tucker. He and his son fitted a shower at his new Fobbin home. Later, they had a call from Tucker saying it needed fixing. The plumber told him it must be a faulty part and he would contact the manufacturers. Tucker's reply was simple: "You obviously don't know who I am. You better get around here now." His former partner at Raquel's remembered Tucker in the early days before drugs took over. He was a mountain of a man, strange in many ways. He spoke to few people and was quite abrupt. He had a very dry sense of humour, but he was quite aggressive to those who tried to enter his circle without invitation. Mention the name Pat Tate to any local copper and they could probably spin you a yarn or two. He certainly became tea-time fodder at Nick canteens across the county when he fled Bellericay Court on the back of a motorbike. It took detectives more than a year to hunt him down after the dramatic 1989 escape. His court appearance was sparked by a meal at Basildon's Happy Eater restaurant after a heavy weekend's clubbing. Tate got into an argument over the bill and, true to form, attacked the cashier before stealing money from the till. He was arrested, but while awaiting trial at Bellericay Magistrates Court, Tate assaulted the police officer, left to guard him, escaped through a window and disappeared on the back of a bike. Police who appealed for help in finding him warned the police he is very dangerous and a violent man. Tate holed himself up in Spain but later made the mistake of crossing the border to Gibraltar, where he was arrested and sent back to Britain and a lengthy jail term. On another occasion, he was being sought in connection with some robberies. Tate held an off-duty police officer who had spotted him in the supermarket straight through a plate glass window. Then there was the case of the WPC who was shoved, spat at and pinned behind a door by Tate as he tried to enter a house and help a man with a heart condition. It is probably no coincidence many of his victims were in the force. It was rumoured his big ambition was to take out a copper. He was a big man, a bodybuilder who worked out at the Progress Home Gym in Hadley. At the time of his death, he was 6'2" and around 18 stone and found it easy to intimidate his victims. One associate remarked that a room darkened as he entered it. Superintendent Ivan Dibley, the officer who investigated his death, admitted, "I don't think I've ever met such a huge man. The tops of his arms and shoulders were just massive." The pair got to know each other when Dibley suspected he was responsible for a series of armed robberies and interviewed him at Swellside Prison on the Isle of Shepley in Kent. He was in the gym every day and actually ran the prison gymnasium. He was fit as a flea, he revealed. The main way these people get the money and status they crave is by using brute force, intimidation, whatever it takes, and Tate was just like that. He added the irony was he didn't have to use violence. His physical bulk would have got him what he wanted. Car dealer Roger Pike, who had known Tate since he was 18, said drugs were responsible for turning him to a gangland thug. Tate had run successful car businesses in Canvey High Street and Orset before getting into trouble. Mr. Pike said he started using steroids to help with his bodybuilding and then got into other drugs in prison. Other pals described the 18-stone drug baron as a good friend you can trust. Mr. Pike, who owned Pitsy Carriage Company in High Street, Pitsy said he was a nice lad when he was 18 or 19. You'd be happy to take out your wife for a meal with him. The drugs messed him up. He got really mixed up with them when he was in prison about 10 years ago. He was inside for a moment of madness when he robbed the calf at the Fortune of War roundabout over an argument over the bill. When they finally brought him back from Spain, he started getting very heavily involved in drugs. We noticed a marked change in his character. A post-mortem on Tate's body discovered a combination of heroin, cocaine, steroids and cannabis in his bloodstream. Mr. Pike continued, I know nobody's got a good word to say about him, and I'm not trying to make a saint of him, but I'm shocked and saddened for Pat because he had a lot of potential. Nobody deserves to die like that. Drug deals, protection rackets, punishment beatings. Tony Tucker's gang dabbled in them all. In the weeks before the deaths, the three friends lived and acted like Latter-day Craze. Ironically though, Tucker wanted nothing to do with the legendary brothers. Through contacts in Whitemoor Prison, Cambridgeshire, where Tate was once an inmate, gangster Reggie Cray expressed an interest in linking up with him on a vending machine operation. You're joking, was apparently Tucker's dismissive response. He's a has-been. It was the 90s ecstasy boom which created the potential for Tucker and friends to earn big money. And at the end of the last decade, he was building up a security business which saw him running doors for Mackell's in Basildon. As ecstasy moved into the mainstream clubland, having control of club security often meant having control of drugs that went in and out. Dealers were prepared to pay a lot of money for the exclusive right to carry out their business inside. Although he didn't sell drugs himself, Tucker became the focal point for deals between large drug firms. By 1992, he had made it to the big time. Superintendent Ivan Dibley said they were wholesalers rather than retailers. On a rising scale of drugs criminality from 1 to 10, they were certainly well above 5. They ruled by fear. When police staged a television raid at Club UK in Wandsworth in October 1995, a dealer dropped 800 pills on the floor to escape arrest. Tucker and Rolfe showed little sympathy, and when the dealer pleaded he couldn't pay their usual cut, they took a bowie knife to his throat. Tate joined the gang in 1994 when he came out of prison. Tucker had heard about him through the grapevine. Superintendent Dibley said, I think they thought they were invincible, and that in a funny sort of way led to their downfall. If you live by the sword, you die by the sword.